time is 7 o'clock. Mr. Aho, would you please call the meeting to order?
Mr. Curtis? Here. Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Here.
Mr. Felber? Here. And Mrs. Gordon is absent.
Okay. Mrs. Powers, I'm sorry, we are all here except for Mrs. Gordon. Could you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Powers, do we have any addendums to the agenda? Okay, thank you. On to my President's report. Welcome to all in attendance and in the meeting and those watching online. A special welcome to the students and families of Samuel Bissell Elementary and R.B. Chamberlain Middle School who are here to celebrate. If you are here for the public participation portion of the meeting and would like to speak at the remonstrance, please be sure to fill out a blue card and hand it to Mr. Aho, our treasurer. Thank you. Last week, the high school had an amazing Spirit Week to honor homecoming, and from what I understand, our new principal, Mr. Chamberlain, participated every day, even on pajama day, and heard a lot of interesting comments, and I think that's pretty awesome. The events continued this past weekend, and the district with the homecoming festivities that began on Friday night with a parade and football game, and they continued on to Saturday with the homecoming dance, and it was actually held on the Tiger Stadium turf. This year things were done a bit differently as our school and many others have gotten pretty creative with social events in the schools. And from the pictures I've seen posted and all over the internet, the comments I've heard, it looks like it was a smashing success and the kids had a blast. The rain held off for much of the night, but it didn't stop the kids from celebrating when it did begin to rain. So a big thank you to the staff, administrators, and the many parent volunteers who put this together, this amazing event for our students. I've heard nothing but positive comments, and it appears that many of the students are hoping that we do this again this way in the future. It was a big turnout too. I'd like to also congratulate this time the high school boys soccer team. As of Monday, they were number 2 in the Cleveland area. And as of yesterday, I believe the Lady Tigers soccer team at the high school are now ranked number 3 in the state. So it's an exciting time for our high school soccer program, and I'm looking forward to some exciting competition ahead. So switching gears, just a brief, maybe little commercials. The Scholastic Book Fairs are back for Bissell and Dodge, so very glad to hear that that's happening back in our buildings again. Also last week, I believe Monday, the League of Women Voters hosted a candidates night here at Twinsburg High School for the 5 candidates running for 3 open school board seats this fall. And I'd like to take this moment to thank them for all their hard work and efforts in planning this in such a short amount of time. So really on to the real reason that we're here, and that's to celebrate some of these outstanding kids here from Samuel Bissell and R.B. Chamberlain. We have students of the month to recognize, so I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Powers as this concludes my President's report.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis. Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, families. It's so great to see so many families here tonight and their children. And we welcome those who are watching us live stream. We thank Mr. Kirtley once again for being here with us and taking care of the live stream responsibilities. Indeed, we have such wonderful students from Samuel Bissell Elementary and R.B. Chamberlain Middle School to celebrate. But before we get to that, there are just a few items I'd like to share with the board tonight. Board of Education, as you know, our quality profile, the 8th annual edition of the quality profile, was released on Monday of this week, and it's filled with the many ways our school district brings value to our community. You can find a copy of the quality profile either in the Blackboard Connect message that I sent to all of our families on Monday, or it's also posted on a couple spots on our district website. We are also going to be mailing the quality profile to homes here in the community this year. We used to put the quality profile as an insert in the Twinsburg bulletin, but I've been hearing that not all families are receiving the bulletin. And because of the importance of this document, and it goes beyond the residents, it goes beyond the families, but we want to extend it to our residents as well. We'll be putting that into the mail, and families should receive that later in the month of October. We look forward to hearing all the feedback. It's really just filled with so many things that were so wonderful about last year. It also does talk about some of our challenges that we've had at the school district and plans moving forward as well. Indeed, it's been exciting to watch our fall athletes compete, and both in person and via live stream. And last week's homecoming was simply fantastic. We want to thank everyone who came out to cheer on and support our Tigers. And, we keep saying that this pandemic is showing us silver linings. And Mrs. Davis, you are right. I think the 900 plus students who were at the homecoming dance on Saturday night could care less about a little bit of a rain shower. Just had such a fantastic time, all dressed up. They looked so wonderful, and just had simply a fantastic time. So we thank everyone for supporting our students. We're learning to do things a little differently, but it doesn't mean that they're not fun, and the students are just having a wonderful time building some memories about their high school experience. The shelves at the Emergency Assistance Center pantry are empty, thus our annual Fill the Bus campaign will soon be underway. Please help us by donating non-perishable food items which will benefit the Emergency Assistance Center, our partner in our Pause on Child Hunger program. Collection bins were dropped off today by Mrs. Hunt, who is the Executive Director of the Emergency Assistance Center, and they're available in all of our schools and at the Board of Education office. I noticed in today's Twinsburg Bulletin that there's a nice article about the Fill the Bus campaign, and there are some locations within our community who are also receiving donations. So we really encourage everyone who can to please donate to the Fill the Bus campaign for this year. Twinsburg virtual students can also drop off items at the Welcome Centers at any of our schools, or they can drop it off at the Board of Education office as well. This year's Fill the Bus campaign begins on October 11th and ends on October 22nd. Then on October 23rd, our varsity football team will meet the box truck over at the Emergency Assistance Center and help unload all of the donations and get it ready for the pantry shelves. So we thank varsity head coach Mike Bell and our varsity football players in advance for their help in making sure that these donations get to the Emergency Assistance Center and are weighed and then put on the shelves for those in our community who need these much needed supplies. Speaking of the Emergency Assistance Center, our Pause on Child Hunger program is now underway. Recall that our Pause on Child Hunger program is our backpack program that provides eligible children with bags of nutritious snacks to enjoy over weekends. We thank the members of our community who so generously donate to this important program, and that includes our staff members. Many of our school staff members have made generous donations to support the Pause on Child Hunger program. We want to give them a special thanks, as well as all the community members who support Pause on Child Hunger every year. Board of Education, this evening we'll present 2 administrative reports. The first will be an overview of our local report card as presented by our Director of Curriculum, Mrs. Jen Farthing. And then the second presentation will be a presentation regarding the continuance of our district reopening plan and my recommendations for the next 6 weeks of the school year. Before we get to these presentations, it's time to celebrate some outstanding students. So let's begin by asking Mrs. Johnson, our wonderful principal at Samuel Bissell Elementary School, to please come to the podium so she can introduce some wonderful Bissell Tigers.
Thank you, Mrs. Powers. Good evening, Board of Education members, as well as Superintendent Powers. Thank you to our families that are here. Today, our Bissell Tigers are going to roar as they come up and receive their recognition today. We're so proud of them, and this is an exciting evening for us. Before I call our students up, I do want to share that we started our readathon, and our goal is to read 100,000 minutes. And as I said before, we're Bissell Tigers and we roar, and we do it every year, so I know we are going to make that happen this year. We've reached 30,000 minutes so far, so 2nd and 3rd graders, let's keep reading. Make sure you log those minutes. You're doing an excellent job, and we're proud of you. So, how are we going to figure it out?
Forget the directions, didn't I? Okay, so boys and girls, what we're going to ask you to do when Mrs. Johnson calls your name is to come up to Mrs. Johnson, get your certificate, and then carefully walk up the steps on that side of the stage. And we're going to greet the Board of Education members and stand on the stage here until all the students in your school have been called, because your mom and dad want to take pictures of you. This is a very important moment for you here this school year. And Mrs. Davis, I just sent Mrs. McKinney out to my car because I left a basket of pins pins in my car. So she'll be back momentarily, and we'll make sure that the boys and girls get the pins as soon as Mrs. McKinney makes her way back in the building.
All right, Missile Tigers, are you ready? So listen carefully for your name. When your name is called, you come down to see me, receive your certificate, and then you're going to walk up the stairs and carefully make your way down and stand very proudly with your certificate. So to tell you a little bit about our program, the Students of the Month program at Samuel Bissell Elementary School recognizes outstanding student achievement at the second and third grade levels. The focus of this recognition is on citizenship, academics, social, civic, volunteer, or other accomplishments that set the students apart from their peers. So we would like to proudly acknowledge the positive accomplishments of the following students. We're going to start with our second graders. Our first student is Griffith Allen from Mrs. Doyle's class. Come on down, Griffith. Myla Crum from Mrs. Twinsburg. Nathaniel Daniels from Miss Charlie's class. Nat Easterman from Mrs. Finn's class. Grayson Haynes from Mr. Eustace's class. Cooper Post from Mrs. Finn's. And Paul Rizzo from Miss King's class. At this time, if we can give them a round of applause, these are our second graders. And if you'd like to take a picture, boys and girls, hold up your signs real nice.
Come closer.
All right, another round of applause. Congratulations. Great job. And now our third graders, we're going to start with Sky Buchanan from Mrs. Dorland's class. Nora Kunitz from Miss Smurfett's class. Aiden Marquis from Mrs. Rower's class. Cameron Noy from Mrs. Lampard. Randy Powell from Mrs. Gladdick's class. And Addison Meyer from Miss Benzie.
And parents, if you want to come right up front, take a picture, that's okay.
And a big round of applause for our third graders. Very nice job, you guys. So proud of you. So we have to do our celebration a little different. So on tomorrow, because tomorrow's their last day, we will deliver to them the pizza lunch. So we're excited about that as well. Once again, congratulations to our students at the And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Reese.
That's loud. All right, thank you, Mrs. Johnson, and good evening, school board, Superintendent Powers. It is a pleasure to be back here with students, and not just pictures of students like we did last year. Starting with our Students of the Month, they received this honor for being recognized for meeting 6 criteria. They have to meet all these criteria, which include shows respect and consideration for others, shows enthusiasm for academic and extracurricular activities, exerts a positive influence on classmates, exhibits leadership characteristics, exhibits patriotism and democratic principles, and shows responsibility. And we have 8 students we recognize, 4 from 7th grade, 4 from 8th grade. And so we'll just take one picture. So when you come up, just stand on the stage so everybody is called. Our first Student of the Month award winner, 7th grader Terry Baumgartner III. And Terry's teachers say, Terry is a wonderful and polite young man. He always puts forth his best effort in everything he does. Next we have Serenity Lucia. Serenity's teachers say that she is a wonderfully kind person. Her outgoing personality is infectious, and she goes out of her way to always make others feel included and welcome. Next we have Desiree Guilford. I do not believe Desiree could make it, but her teacher says she is quiet and extremely kind. She's conscientious in her studies, and even with her mask on, her smile shines bright. And our final 7th grader is Sean Chamberlain. And his teachers say, even though it is early in the school year, Sean has showed himself to be a leader in the classroom, and he always puts forth his best effort. Moving on to our 8th graders. Camille Smith. Okay, I guess Camille did not make it. Camille's teacher says she's eager to participate in class. Her assignments are always turned in on time, and she's polite and respectful. Next we have Isaiah Kirkpatrick. Mrs. Salmon said Isaiah has started the year off well. He is always eager to participate in class, takes his academics seriously. He is very kind and respectful to his peers. He is a joy to have in class. Next we have Emery Mitchell. Emery is bubbly, focused, and outgoing, and her positive attitude shows in all of her academic classes. And finally, and I hope you made it, I know he's at our football game at Wadsworth, and they're going to try to make it back in time, Bryce Duffley. That was probably our farthest road trip of the year, so we were worried Bryce wouldn't make it back. There you go. Congratulations, Bryce. Bryce's teachers say he is already shown to be a high-achieving student this year. He works hard in class, participates daily, and comes up with great ideas. He also has a great sense of humor. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for our RV Chamberlain Students of the Month. Please feel free to come in and take pictures. And a couple of our building highlights. It was a very anxious start to our school year because we welcomed about 150 sixth graders into our building. So it was how are we going to manage the extra traffic, both the students in the building and also drop-offs and pick-up. And we couldn't be happier, and it's a joy to have the sixth grade with us. It adds certainly a new element, and it's been exciting seeing kids who get to go outside for recess every day. One of the neat things that happened this year, our front shrubbery had been overgrown quite a bit, and it got cleaned up, which revealed the beautiful piece of artwork that a lot of people didn't even know was there. But in front of that, the class of 71 put a bench in front of RV Chamberlain Middle School, and the kids and the community, I see people there very often. It was a really neat location. So we've enjoyed that addition to our building. We received word in September, just a couple weeks ago, that we were a gold medal PBIS school, one of about 30 schools in the state to get that award. And our PBIS team is not resting on that. In September, they had the positive affirmation scavenger hunt, where students went around the building looking for positive clues. And in October, they started mindfulness videos. We have over 100 students participating in our fall athletics. And recently we just finished our Start With Hello Week activities where students wore green. We had a new student mixer for the new students to Twinsburg. And students taught us to say hello in different languages. And we have over 20 different languages that are spoken by our students. And so we learned things such as hola and ni hao and even what's up. So that was a lot of fun to have our Start with Hello Week. And looking forward to coming up with our PTA, our Fall Festival, which has been on hiatus for a year, and bringing that back. And hopefully it's as successful as the high school homecoming. So thank you everyone for your support, and once again, congratulations to our students.
Thank you, Mr. Reese and Mrs. Johnson. It's always fun to celebrate our students. And Mrs. Davis, that concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any committee reports this evening?
Yes, Mrs. Davis, I have a few. As you know, I'm the representative on the board for the Cuyahoga Valley Career Center as the vice president. Just a couple Twinsburg related highlights. First of all, CVCC is celebrating 50 years this year, which is quite an accomplishment. The Fire and EMS Academy students paid tribute to the anniversary of 9/11, and they did that on September 10th. We also had our very own Joshua Harris, who is our success program teacher at high school, visit CVCC and observe some classes and participate there. Let's see. We also we had an open house on September 2nd, and also on September 2nd, the state Skills USA director Jackie Walker visited CVCC to speak with the high school students on the wonderful opportunities involved in the Skills USA program. That is a national organization that students in the trades and industrial education. Let's see. I also, briefly mentioned that our treasurer is reporting very, very favorable balance with CVCC. There's a lot of complicated back and forth between the aid and so forth and what's going on with COVID, but CVCC is in a very strong position. So that's one report, if anybody has any questions on that. All right, I'm going to move on to the Business Advisory Council, which had a meeting on September 28th, very well attended. Briefly, the purpose of this council is to form an alliance between academic, business, and government communities and work together to significantly improve the opportunities and make recommendations for workforce development initiatives. And that's a standing committee of the board. Again, very well attended. After welcome by Superintendent Powers and some updates from myself on the board, we heard an update from the high school principal, Brian Lynn, and also specifically Alex Popovich, the new program supervisor, brought us up to date on some changes to what we're going to attempt to do with the academy and how that may really impact the continuing efforts of career readiness and exploration, and really looking to bring a lot of those programs back into during the day and expand participation there. So there was a lot of give and take and back and forth about ideas and the future of that program and internships. And there was a lot of networking going on and giving Mr. Popovich in his first meeting some ideas on folks to reach out to and pick up where Norm had left off. So that is the Business Advisory Council. I'll turn to Mrs. Powers, see if I missed anything. I think that was the highlight. So those are the two committee reports that I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other committee reports this evening? None? Okay. Mr. Ayo, do we have any cards for remonstrance? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Feldman, if I could just expound just 1 minute about the Business Advisory Council meeting. The changes that are being planned for the Academy at Twinsburg High School will be planned for next school year. As we know, our students will forecast, high school students forecast for courses in February. And so there's much to be done about the realignment of the Academy at Twinsburg High School, our workforce development initiative here in our school district. And what we know from the last 4 years of the Academy is that when our courses or our offerings were given after school hours, we didn't have a great number of students participate because our students are very busy after school. They are athletes and they are in extracurriculars. Many of them are working, some are in College Credit Plus courses, some have responsibilities at their homes. And so we think if we could push the programming into the school day and it becomes something for which credit is given, we will have much greater participation in the academy at Twinsburg High School. So we look forward to finalizing some plans, presenting it first to the District Curriculum and Technology Committee, and then it'll come to the Board of Education for a final review and hopeful approval. But that's the reason why there's going to be some changes, because we feel that the program is so very valuable, but we haven't been able to capture the attention of very many students. And so it's really our intention to grow the program by providing opportunities during the school day. And again, the students would be able to earn credit for participating in the Academy at Twinsburg High School. So much more to come with regard to that.
Thanks. I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity.
It is, and as Mr. Felber indicated, the business partners that were at the meeting are just so committed to this project that we've had underway for many years, thanks to the first work that was done by the Twinsburg Chamber of Commerce. And then over the years, it has evolved into the Academy at Twinsburg High School. But we're very pleased and very grateful for our business partners in our community, and also communities surrounding Twinsburg City School District who have great ideas. They're very interested in us developing a great program because it might mean valuable employees for their businesses into the future. So we appreciate that. And the guidance that they've provided over the years has been fantastic, and it was the same at the last meeting as well.
Thank you. All right, and then, so we have no requests from announcements, so administrative reports.
Sure. So this evening, Board of Education, as I indicated, there are two administrative reports. Both are very important. The first is a report given by our Director of Curriculum, Mrs. Jennifer Bardling. This is the first opportunity for you and the community to take a look at the changes that are being made now to the local report card. Legislative action has changed the appearance of the report card, and Mrs. Bardling is going to present to you the data that we will be seeing in the next couple of weeks on the Twinsburg City School District local report card is published by the Ohio Department of Education. I do want to remind everyone that last school year was very unique in the sense that we were in the middle of the pandemic, and we still are. And much like all the school districts across the state of Ohio, our students' performance, as indicated on the local report card, may look depressed in some places. And again, we have to consider all that had happened last year and all that continues to happen, and the fact of the matter that keeping kids happy and healthy in a pandemic took our priority and our focus. So this evening, Mrs. Sparding will present to you the first of the data, and if you have questions, please engage us during the presentation, as we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education, in-person guests, and those viewing from home. This evening, we are going to talk about the 2020-2021 local report card, which encompassed the 2020-2021 school year. I don't need to remind you that school looked very different last year. We started out the year with moving 11 grade levels. Our families were offered the choice for learning during the pandemic. At least 30% of our students were part of the Twinsburg Virtual Academy. The secondary students were on campus every other day and completing blended learning activities the opposite day. Our testing environment was not typical, as we were testing in multiple unfamiliar locations. We were using the community center, classrooms at Wilcox Primary School, and classrooms at Bissell Elementary School. Additionally, we had families who were not comfortable with their students coming in for testing. As a reminder, what we're about to discuss is a snapshot in the day of the life of our students. The focus for the 2021 school year was to make sure our students felt safe and secure, and there was a large emphasis on social and emotional wellness. The local report card is due to be released at the end of next week. This is a snapshot of what the local report card will look like. You can see that each of the components are marked as NR, or non-report. The legislature knew that the results were not going to be like a typical school year, and they created that ruling last spring. If you remember, lots of school districts were hoping for no testing last spring, but this was the alternative that the legislature came up with, that they would read us as non-report. However, there is data available for us to look at recovery and improvement planning that we are going to look at in the upcoming slides. The components are going to show as non-report, but there will be data inside the system for us to use and investigate. As Mrs. Powers mentioned this week, the annual quality profile was released. We prefer, oops, this is not going to be my friend tonight. Okay, we're going to just pretend you're looking at the quality profile. This week, the annual quality profile was released. We prefer to highlight all of the great programming showcased in the 8th edition of the quality profile. There it is. That's what we wanted to talk about. We start this evening with Samuel Bissell Elementary School. The 3rd graders take the OST in English Language Arts and Mathematics. In all tested areas, our scores are above the state average. The state average was on a downward trend from prior years, ranging from a 5 to a 25% decrease in state averages. We're certainly not excited about these results. However, we were, and actually still are, in the midst of a pandemic. As the testing window was approaching, we knew we would not be as successful as prior years. Therefore, in the spring, we talked to you about a summer reading camp and extra scoop opportunities for our K-6 students. These pictures show that our students were on a walking field trip to the Twinsburg Public Library during reading camp. The student performance at George D. Dodge Intermediate School aligned with the rest of the state, and we know that there is room for improvement. If you look at the performance percentages, you can see that just a few students made a difference in meeting the indicator. You will see that there are 2 indicators at a 79.5 and a 79.7, and we're going to talk about that in just one quick second. As we start to look at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School, you will note that the accelerated students in algebra and geometry continue to excel, which is a reason to celebrate. We want to offer a huge shout out to Miss Amanda Seferati and the students in the algebra and geometry classes at RBC. They did a fantastic job on the assessment last year. As the administrative team presented in September, it is our intention to begin the Bridge to Success programming in October. Again, we know there are gaps, and our staff is using the data from the spring OST as well as current data to intervene with our students. Please keep in mind that our K-8 reading and math interventionists were providing classroom instruction last year. They were needed to provide for the smaller class sizes due to physical distancing. So last year there was very little intervention provided beyond the classroom teachers. Interventions are needed, and we are very excited and looking forward to getting Bridge to Success moving forward. Here are the results from Twinsburg High School. We celebrate the success of the English Language Arts 2 exam and both social studies exams. Something that may look different to you is the end of course retake. This has been added to account for our students that need to retake end of course assessments. This allows the results to count only in this category, not in the other categories. So for example, if we have a student who needs to retake the biology exam, they do not count, for example, in the 318 students that took the biology assessment. They count only in the end of course retake improvement. You will see that the state standard for that category is that 25% of students pass the end of course retakes. So those were the achievement categories. Now we're going to look at performance index. Performance index is a weighted average of each exam. So if you would look at your student results, you would see limited, basic, proficient, accelerated, and advanced. This component is negatively impacted by the number of students who didn't test. Each test had a few students, so as we were talking in our central office meeting, I said, every test had a few students, it couldn't have been that impactful. So, we tallied up how many students, so, because you think 4 students at Bissell in math, 5 students at 4th grade English, that's not that many. But when we tallied it up, there were 203 tests that were not taken by our students last year that we were expected to administer. So 203 assessments, my notes say that hurts. I mean, that obviously impacted us a lot from last year. So that is the performance index. The next phase that we're going to talk about is progress. Progress is the component formerly known as value added. If you recall, value added looks at growth over time, not our student achievement in particular. As a reminder, the yellow category, which is in the middle, is 1 year of growth. That is what our students are expected to meet. In a typical year, if our scores were being graded for progress and we met 1 year of growth, that's a rating of a C. It's not an A or a B, it's 1 year of growth, but the rating for that is a C. There was no mathematics test given in the 3rd grade for the 2019-2020 school year to use as a baseline. Therefore, there is not a progress rating for Math 4 that year. And the orange comes out a little different on your printout, so I'm sorry for that. For the progress for R.B. Chamberlain Middle School, we have to remember that our students were not with us 50% of the time last year. We look forward to the progress component moving upward for the 2021 ratings. And I wish Mr. Reese was still here because I know he's up for the challenge. Of all things, this is his area, and I can almost guarantee money that we will not see that much red next year for R.B. Chamberlain. And that goes to show that the positive success that we have had at RBC recently is paying off at the high school level. Last year, our students were at or above expected growth in the 3 reported areas. So they were all yellow, dark green, and light green. So we offer kudos to our high school teachers for continuing the growth with the students for the progress area. The next component to talk about is the gap closing component. This component has been redesigned. The 1920 school year would have been the first year using performance index to measure gap closing. Previously, achievement was the measure used for gap closing. Gap closing rates each subgroup against a previously set performance index goal. Each year, the subgroups must have a higher performance index score. So that rate is set for us after the test this year. We will know, oh my gosh, we will know where our students need to be for next year. As you've seen this evening, we do have work to do in mathematics, as do many of the other districts in the state of Ohio. Our goal with the testing environment was parent choice and safety. And again, gap closing also includes the participation measure. And the district received a demotion due to participation for testing last spring. We had approximately 30% of our students in the virtual academy. Some families did not feel comfortable participating in state testing opportunities. And that accounted again for the 203 tests not taken. Again, we're not making excuses. This is not a blame. This is just sharing the numbers with you. And as I said before, a few numbers here and there do add up, and it added up to 203 tests. The graduation rate is a PK to 12 effort. This measure pays off at the high school. However, it starts with our Wilcox Tigers. So we want to offer congratulations to everyone involved in helping our Tigers graduate. And this rating, if it was rated, would be an A in the 4-year and the 5-year category. The next 2 measures are as hard to explain as value added. This is the improvement at risk K-3 readers, and this measures our students as reading as not on track and moving towards on track, with the goal of all of our students passing the 3rd grade English Language Arts Ohio State test. Last year, there was not a retention component as enacted by the legislature. You will notice, though, that there is a dip in the 3rd grade. There is one very small column, and that is due to the fact that we only tested in the fall of 3rd grade for 2019, and there was no spring administration, so that is why that number seems out of alignment with the other numbers. The Prepared for Success component looks at all students in the 4- and 5-year cohort for the class of 2020. This means that all students are counted in the denominator for the cohort, regardless of their future path. For example, there were 132 students who took the SAT. 90 of those 132 students were remediation-free. However, if you look at the percentage of remediation-free for the SAT, the entire cohort of the 654 is in the denominator. So that's 90 out of 654. It is a more accurate depiction that 90 of the 132 who actually took the SAT should be accounted for, which would be 68% are remediation-free, not 13% remediation-free. However, I don't get to make what counts into the denominator. The industry recognized credential is awarded from a CVC pathway. We should be looking at the number of students who participate at CVCC in the denominator instead of the whole 654 in the cohort. The AP exam scores of a 3 or better in the chart show the number of AP participants. However, the entire 2-year cohort is in the denominator, not just the AP exam students. The goal is that our students are enrolled, enlisted, or employed. In my humble opinion, this measure is very focused on the enrollment path. However, the portrait of a graduate graphic encompasses the goal that we want our students. We want our students to be enrolled, enlisted, or employed, because college is not for every single solitary student. So all that information is for the report card that will be coming out next week. There are additional changes coming to the report card system that will be in place for the 21-22 school year. The A to F rating is going to be replaced with a 5-star performance rating system. Next year, there will be 5 components that are going to be rated. And the 6th component is college, career, workforce, and military readiness. That is going to be a non-graded component, and it will be report only for 3 years. There will be a joint committee that will be created to recommend changes to the Prepared for Success measure as it stands now. And hopefully that new measure will create a more accurate depiction of high school graduates. Each component is going to have subtle changes in the protocol. All of the components are going to have changes. We can go into more detail when the time is closer. I thought we would just focus on tonight on the report card as it comes that will be released next week. As I close the presentation, one more shout out for all of the great programming highlighted in the quality profile and our #1 priority last year, which was safety of our students. And now, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Do you have any comments? I'm disappointed, and I'm disappointed not in our staff, not disappointed with our students or anyone who put forth the effort to administer tests under the most difficult circumstances that any district has ever faced, ever. I'm disappointed in the lack of understanding at the federal level and at the state level. It is ridiculous that any school district had to administer standardized tests under the circumstances, and especially with respect to Twinsburg. We're running literally 2 separate districts, one online and one physically where kids come in. We're working our butts off to just make sure that we're creating an environment that is safe as possible where our students can learn. So we gave our parents choice. Those that were not comfortable coming in, they were allowed to learn online. We learned a lot. We learned that the online platform is not the most appropriate platform for all students. However, under the circumstances, we allowed it. That being said, again, I think it's absurd. I said this when we were forced to administer these assessments. So it doesn't come as a surprise to me, especially the lack of participation, because there are real concerns, safety concerns, and the logistical nightmare of having to administer these assessments made things even more difficult. And I don't even want to go into depth about the social emotional impact of students having to sit for a meaningless assessment when there's enough stress as it is dealing with health and safety. So that being said, it's just it's extremely unfortunate that adults that have capacity to do the right thing, the most responsible thing, chose not to do it and put ratings and statistics ahead of the safety and well-being of not only our students but our staff. So I'm not terribly concerned about these assessment results. What I do know is that our staff already knew what was going on. They're able to understand what our students know and what they're able to do. They've always known that. Administering a standardized test was not going to tell us anything that we didn't already know. As a board, I know that the superintendent has always kept us abreast of what's going on. As a board, we have stepped up to provide the necessary resources so that we can address a lot of the learning loss that we knew took place. And I know that that has been ongoing. I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to make up a lot of ground for what our students weren't able to achieve. And it's not for anything of a fault of their own. This is truly circumstances well beyond their control and our control. So while I appreciate you presenting this information, I'm extremely disappointed of having to even do this when it wasn't, when it was completely unnecessary.
And Mark, I'm going to add, you said a whole lot, so I'm just going to add just a very few things. The colleges and universities, many of them, much of them really waive ACTs as an entrance requirement, and they focused and looked at the student as a whole and what they did throughout their high school years and outside of high school. They didn't so much stress and focus on the ACT last year because of what it was. We all know what it was. So when you hear people throwing around stats and numbers and kind of putting information out there that they're not really backing up or explaining or even bothering to look into reasons why and kind of just briefly throwing it out there and moving on, and I think it's misleading and I think it's irresponsible. And if you have questions, ask, call, ask, because just listening to hearsay or somebody else's viewpoint as to what they think is a problem isn't necessarily the problem, isn't necessarily the fact. So by all means, we always welcome questions from the public to contact the administration, the board, to get your answers. And I guess that's where I'm leaving that. Thank you.
I would just echo that. I appreciate Mark's representation as our legislative liaison. He's got a really strong pulse on that. And you said a lot of the right things that reflect what this day in the life of a student is. I'm disappointed too that the non-participation impacts us. It doesn't seem to ever have, that's never been fair, that those that don't test you know, and obviously during the pandemic even worse, but we do know that at the classroom level, Ms. Lays and the various tools that they use, they're already on this, you know, and you know, I'm sure there are fall assessments, I'm sure they're doing it at the classroom level. So I'm not overly concerned about these numbers yet. I really more want to see the, you know, the continuous improvement reports that you come to us quarterly. That's really where we know what our district is doing, and not that, you know, moment in time during the pandemic. So I know it was probably very stressful, not only administrating and interpreting this data, especially that, you know, even in the midst of it, they're changing the definitions yet again. I think this is, I don't know, Tina, what have we seen in our 8 years? 3 or 4 different definitions that come out. I think they're going to invent a new alphabet.
It's not much consistency.
Yeah, so thank you for delivering the news, but it's we know what's behind it and what's not behind it. So.
The only other thing that I would add is I don't want it to get lost on the public or any of our staff. Our priorities were exactly where they needed to be last year. Our priorities are exactly where they need to be this year, and that's the bottom line. We understand what's important for our staff and our students. We understood what was important then, and we understand what's important now. And we have a plan, and we're implementing it.
Thank you.
This is a banner day because Mrs. Farley never lets me touch technology. And I did a pretty good job.
We need to order you a new laptop.
It's just a few other thoughts with regard to the report card before I move on here. You know, Board, I have to tell you that when the results came in, and they dribble in all summer long, those of us who are in the business know that it's not delivered all at one time, and we go through a process of analyzing the data and appealing where we can the data, and those kinds of things happen all summer. I can tell you that administratively we were quite proud of the results from last year because of the fact that we lived what we did through a pandemic. And now that we're beyond it, we seem to forget all that happened last year and all that had to happen to keep our children safe and our staff safe and our families safe. And so obviously we have a lot of work to do. Obviously the scores are not Twinsburg scores, and we know that, we own it. And in fact, this afternoon, Mrs. Farthing and Mrs. McKinney and I were talking about this and about what needs to be done, and we need to get back in the saddle, and we need to focus on the good stuff. And we just need to provide the interventions the students need to be able to grow academically as well as socially and emotionally. And we thank the board for supporting our Bridge to Success program. As you know, that will be kicking off here in the month of February. Where am I? In the month of October, and we look forward to sharing with you through our reports here at the board meetings the successes of those programs. We have a number of students that we've identified now. We'll be contacting parents, aligning that with our staff, and getting underway very shortly. So thanks again for that, because that will make a difference. And we would expect that next year's report card will be much more what we're used to, because our students, for the most part, are back on campus. Our programs of intervention are in place. And we're using the data to really inform what needs to be done here. So we thank you for your encouraging words. Our staff so much worked hard last year. They work hard every year, but last year was just a phenomenally difficult year to maneuver through. And I am personally very proud of each and every one of them and the administrative team who really made it all happen. So thank you for your encouraging words, and I'm sure we'll be able to relay that to them. It's much appreciated. So board, as I promised back in August, every 6 weeks I wanted to talk with you about the continuance of the district reopening plan. We know that the pandemic continues to evolve. On a call this afternoon with Summit County Public Health Director Donna Skoda, we are understanding that on October 30th, Pfizer is supposed to request of the FDA authorization for the vaccination for children ages 5 to 11. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see if that does come to fruition, but things continue to move along. And so that's the reason why these 6-week checks are important, because as things move along, as a school district, we should be able to put into place some new procedures and guidelines. And this evening, I'm going to be making some recommendations, very cognizant of where the data has taken us this year, understanding that our goal for this year is to continue to provide a healthy and safe school environment for all of our students. As you know, Board of Education, we have just 50 students who are learning virtually this year through the Ohio Online Learning Program. That would mean most of our students are here on campus. If you walk into any of our buildings on any day of the week, you hear great learning going on. You see kids who are excited and happy to be here, and teachers and support staff just doing an amazing job. Keeping them safe and happy and healthy in this pandemic continues to be our primary focus. Let's begin by taking a look at the data posted on the Summit County Public Health Department's website regarding the number of COVID-19 cases experienced by residents in the 44087 zip code since March of 2020, and again for the last 60 days. So if you look on the left side of that chart, that's what I'm referencing, since March of 2020, when the pandemic began, and then the last 60 days. You will note that there have been 2,407 COVID positive cases in our 44087 zip code since the beginning of the pandemic, and 343 cases over the last 60 days. More grim than that is the fact that there have been 46 deaths in the 44087 zip code since March of 2020. And you know, that statistic just stopped me in my tracks when I saw that. 46 members of our community of 44087 have passed on because of the COVID pandemic. That's a grim statistic, and one that just makes you stop and think. Now, I know that we have students who live in the 44202 zip code and the 44263 zip code, but we're going to focus primarily this evening on the 44087, or that of the city of Twinsburg and Twinsburg Township. The next slide shows the growth in COVID-19 cases in our 44087 zip code since the beginning of the pandemic. The slide also shows the percentage by race, age group, and gender. And you'll see a significant difference between the growth in COVID for Caucasian individuals versus Black individuals versus Asian individuals. That statistic was kind of interesting to me. And you can also see that by gender, it's almost 50-50 when you talk about males and females. The next slide, the next two slides, show statistics related to the COVID-19 full vaccinations, with this first slide illustrating full vaccinations in Summit County. As of Monday of this week, 295,219 residents of Summit County have been vaccinated, with the majority of residents vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine at 56%. As of Monday, only 6% of the Summit County residents who have been vaccinated are of the ages 12 to 17. Now let's take a deeper dive into vaccination data for our 44087 zip code. As you can see, 14,935 people who reside in our zip code are fully vaccinated. Again, the vaccine of choice appears to be Pfizer at 71%. This chart also shows that 1,229 students ages 12 to 17 are fully vaccinated, and 1,185 young adults ages 18 to 24 are fully vaccinated. I can tell you, Board, that we have 1,979 students of the age 12 to 17 and 64 students who are 18 years of age. This statistic would then imply that a great number of our students are fully vaccinated. However, we know that not all are by these numbers. Next, I would like to take a look at our own district data regarding COVID-positive students and staff members. This slide is a step back in time, exactly 7 weeks into the 2021 school year, where you will see that we had, at that time, 16 students identified as COVID positive and 2 staff members identified as COVID positive with a cumulative number of 19 COVID positive cases. So exactly where we are this year with last year. So we're into the 7th week of the school year. Into the 7th week of last school year, we had a cumulative number of 19. Now let's take a look at this year's data. Looking at this week's dashboard, which can be found on the district website, you will note that as of yesterday, for the first 7 weeks of this year, we have 83 students who have tested positive and 14 staff members who have tested positive, with an overall number of COVID positive cases at 97. Again, 1 year ago, our overall cases were at 19. The Delta variant is truly impacting our school family in a very negative way. The board, I haven't had time today to update our dashboard, but we hit the 100-person marker today. We have 2 students and 1 staff member that I'll be adding this evening after the board meeting. So we're at 100 cases now of COVID positive staff and students in our district. Slide number 9. Here's a table that illustrates the number of COVID positive student cases at each of our grade levels. As you can see, the virus is this year much more impactful at our elementary schools, noting that 19 Wilcox students, 14 Bissell students, and 23 Dodge students tested COVID positive this year, and again, that is as of yesterday's reporting. 17 of our middle school students and 10 of our high school students have also tested positive, with the difference between elementary and secondary at 56 students versus 27 students. The 2 students from today, one happens to be a Wilcox student and one happens to be a Dodge student, so the actual numbers would be 20 and 24 when we talk about those 2 schools. Finally, we look at the numbers of staff and students who have been quarantined. This chart does not include the 97 positive cases. However, it does illustrate that 97 members of our school family have been impacted by quarantines. Again, these 97 individuals shown on this chart, and this is students and staff combined, do not include the 97 positive cases that you just saw on the previous slide. So we've had 97 positives, and then 97 additional folks, staff and students, have been quarantined because of a close contact with a positive person. Thus, taking into consideration all of these data points, I'm making the following recommendations. Recall that these recommendations are for the next 6 weeks, or from Monday, October 11th through the second meeting in November, which would be November 17th. First, we'll talk about facial coverings. Based upon our school family's data, I recommend that we continue the practice of requiring masks for all students, with the exception of our preschool students. Preschool students are strongly recommended to wear masks. However, we realize that for some 3- and 4-year-old children, wearing a mask is a very difficult thing to do. Of course, the formal mask exemptions filed and authorized earlier this year would still apply. All staff members who teach, supervise, or come into contact with students will be required to wear masks. And students are not required to wear masks while they're actively engaged in physical activities or when they are outdoors for recess, athletics, and/or extracurricular activities. Next are recommendations for visitors and the use of our facilities by external groups. As you know, visitors and external groups have been restricted from our facilities since March of 2020. Before making the following recommendations, I surveyed our staff members to gain their feedback about visitors and whether visitors should be allowed in our schools during the ongoing pandemic. I'd like to share some other feedback here. And board, the reason that I asked the staff is they've worked so hard to ensure that protocols are in place, that students are wearing their masks, that they are physically distanced, that they're washing their hands, that they're sanitizing their hands. And all of those things are very, very important to keep the students and staff safe. And so I knew before I could make any recommendations to you about us welcoming us welcoming visitors to our schools, it would be very important for us to ask the question of the staff whether or not they would be comfortable in allowing that to happen. Sorry, are you having difficulty? Okay, there you go. So as you can see, according to our survey, 141 staff members, or 63% of the respondents, feel that parents or guardians should be able to return to classrooms to assist. However, it's interesting that 82 of our staff members, or 37%, do not believe that visitors should be permitted in classrooms at this time because of the ongoing pandemic. When thinking about the number of visitors permitted to assist in classrooms, the majority at 50%, or 112 respondents, believe that only one parent should be permitted to assist in the classrooms at any one time. When thinking about parents who assist with clerical office tasks, 158 respondents, or 71%, feel that parents should be able to return to assist with these kinds of tasks. Again, these visitors would not have access to the classrooms, but would rather be working on clerical tasks, such as hallway bulletin boards, making copies, or sorting mail. When asked if parents who are assisting in classrooms should be required to show proof of full COVID-19 vaccinations, 157 respondents, or 70%, believe that proof of full vaccinations should be a requirement. Our staff members also weighed in on proof of full COVID vaccinations for parents who chaperone trips and who support activities such as fundraising during the school day on our campuses. Of the respondents, 153, or 69%, feel these volunteers should provide proof of full vaccination in order to chaperone or support these activities. Feedback regarding parent-teacher conferences was pretty evenly split, with 116 respondents, or 52%, not in support of in-person conferences, and 107, or 48%, in favor of in-person conferences. However, when thinking about IEP meetings and 504 meetings, which may include sharing of very specific and technical information regarding a student's performance and progress in school, 137 respondents, or 61%, felt that these meetings should be held in person, while 86 respondents, or 39%, feel that these meetings should not be held in person. The next several slides highlight some of the comments made by our staff members regarding our COVID-19 visitor guidance procedures. There's a lot of words on the slide, and I've just highlighted a comment by staff member, or as we go, one per slide. The first one says, with the continued high numbers of COVID impacting the healthcare systems in our state, I do not think that we should change our policies at this time, especially with the children in our building who are definitely not vaccinated, and some of whom cannot wear masks due to their age and developmental issues. I'm all for parent volunteers and involvement and cannot wait to have meetings in person rather than virtual in the future. I just don't think that we are there yet in terms of numbers to safely have visitors in the building at this time. Another staff member commented, I'm comfortable with these changes as long as it is clear that all guests are expected to wear masks. I do believe that parents in the classrooms with students under 12 must provide proof of vaccination. I have 2 children under 12, and I would be very uncomfortable knowing unvaccinated, non-essential adults were allowed to work with them. Another staff member commented, I only suggested no for parent-teacher conferences, as that would be quite a bit of traffic with parents who may or may not be vaccinated. If they can present proof of a vaccination, however, then I'm fine with that option as well. And still another staff member commented, the children at Wilcox are not eligible for the vaccination yet. Therefore, bringing outside visitors to the building puts them at a greater risk of exposure. Additionally, our school and classrooms are very crowded. Even one additional adult reduces the physical distance for staff and students who are already present. At this time, I prefer not to allow visitors to our school. And 2 comments on this slide. Allowing in visitors during the day raises my anxiety, especially since I'm in every classroom and all over the building. Until the students are able to be vaccinated, please keep the rules the same at the younger level. Also, parents who volunteer at Bissell often bring along younger siblings. Please do not allow any unvaccinated siblings either. When a Dodge staff member noted, classrooms at Dodge are so tight with students. Until this pandemic is over, I suggest we leave parents out of the classrooms. There's physically no room for additional adults. As we head into winter months, I think we should avoid additional people indoors. Next comment, I believe that allowing visitors will only complicate all the district has done to mitigate COVID-19. Staff are trying to be mindful of the students and their symptoms, and so I believe bringing visitors, while we miss being able to do so at this time, would not be a good idea. Next comment, I believe providing proof of vaccination is very discriminatory and violates medical privacy rights. Will there be exceptions for the many who have had COVID and natural immunity or allergies, etc.? I have a major problem with proof of vaccination. And then, because of the policies that the district has had in place, we have been able to keep our schools open. The pandemic is still ongoing with high numbers locally, so I do not think it is in the best interest of students and staff to open the buildings up to more people at this point in time. At the high school, parents who scheduled conferences with me last year stated that they liked the virtual format and hope that continues and it is more convenient for them. Thank you for all you've done to put measures in place to keep students and staff healthy, and please continue them. So I board in your packet this evening is a copy of the full survey results, including all of the comments that were submitted by our staff. I hope you take some time to reflect on the comments that the staff made, the concern that they have by what they're continuing to do in this environment. It is not an easy task to operate in a pandemic. Our staff is so very worried about the children and about themselves, about their family members, and they provided a great deal of information for you to read through. And so, board, based on the data that I shared with you, both Summit County public health data and specifically our school district data, I'm making the following recommendations, and we'd like to have some conversation here once I've read through them all. You know, it takes about an hour for each of those children who are noted as positive to do all the contact tracing. And so what happens is, generally speaking, a parent will call the district nurse. District nurse then notifies me. At that point, I'm notifying the building principal, and I'm also notifying Mark Desmond, who is our transportation supervisor. The building principal will pull the class rosters and talk to the teachers to determine whether or not there has been any close contact with that positive student. At the same time, Mark Desmond is pulling the bus seating charts and pulling the attendance of the students on the bus. And thankfully, we have the Z-passes this year, so electronically it's an easier task than it was 2 years ago because of the Z-passes. Once all that information is then gathered, they send it to me, and then the work continues. At that point, I'm calling the parent of the positive student, and we have a conversation. First and foremost, how is the child doing? Second of all, I remind our parents that thanks to your generosity, board, we have quarantine support teachers on campus to help students who are home under quarantine or who are home under isolation stay up to task with their classroom assignments. Each of the 5 of our quarantine support teachers are doing an excellent job this year, and I'm so grateful for the work that they're doing. Also, Mr. Bindis has been running meal bags to our families who have positive cases, and so that work continues in our food service department. The next step is to submit to the Summit County Public Health Department the data with regard to the positive child or the positive staff member. So I go into the Summit County Public Health Department's website, and it asks me a number of questions about each of those positives: name, birth date, county of residence, etc. Once I submit that, it then sends me another portal to answer additional questions with regard to close contacts. So for the case today, we had a case at Wilcox for which there are 5 contacts to submit. So the building principal is calling those families to inform them that their child's name is submitted as a close contact. And then I'm submitting additional information about each of those 5 children into the Summit County portal. Next, each of the families that have children either on the school bus where the positive situation is or in the classroom receive separate letters from me indicating that we have a positive case. And then there's the district reporting that has to happen. And then finally, working with Mrs. Gardner, our webmaster, we post the updated dashboard. For every single positive case, we spend over an hour going through that process every single day. And it's the right thing to do because we believe in transparency for our families. But it is a lot of work, and there's a lot of very concerned parents when I'm calling them and they tell me about their children. We have had 2 elementary students who have been in the ICU because of COVID-19. I did not know that when I called the parents. And to be told the story about their children is a heart-wrenching thing. So COVID is alive and well in our school district, unfortunately alive and well. And I think as a school district, we need to continue to mitigate it as much as we can by putting into place or continuing the practices that we have here and as I'm recommending this evening. First of all, the first recommendation is that parent-teacher conferences and IEP meetings and 504 meetings will continue to be held virtually, at least for the next 6 weeks. This is important because we're right in the midst of beginning parent-teacher conferences. In fact, I believe RBC begins tomorrow. So we're recommending that conferences would continue to be held virtually. And to be honest with you, board, I've heard from both parents and from our staff members that there's a preference actually for virtual meetings, and they feel that they get to the matter at hand, have some really good conversations, and some of our parents don't have to step away from jobs and work and other responsibilities. They could log on to a virtual call, have that conversation with our staff members, and then get back to their life. So I don't think that this will necessarily be a negative for our families, and I think it's a positive for our staff members, because they are very concerned about mixing in with cohorts that they're not used to mixing in with at this point. As you know, board, thank you. Last board meeting, you are permitting field trips. We're going to suggest that our parent chaperones for our field trips would be permitted. However, I'm respectfully requesting that the parents would have to show proof of full vaccination in order to travel with our students on school buses and to mix with the children while they're away from campus at their assigned field trip locations. Thirdly, parent assistance for clerical office tasks will be permissible. And a reminder that these tasks are not held in classrooms, but rather in our offices or in other common spaces. In-school booster PTA-sponsored events held in common spaces will be permissible with limited parental participation. As Mrs. Davis indicated, our book fairs are alive and well thanks to your guidance at the last Board of Education meeting. And our kids are so excited about being able to purchase books on our campuses. So thank you for allowing that. Book fairs are generally held in common spaces, not in classrooms. And so we think we can do this without risk of the spread of COVID. At this point, based on the majority feedback provided by our staff, I'm going to suggest that we do not have parents or other adult visitors assisting in our classrooms. The only exception to that would be we do help support young educators who are in their field experiences and student teaching experiences who have passed through their BCI checks. All universities are now requiring COVID vaccinations for their students. And so with regard to our field service students and students in universities doing student teaching, we'd like to support them in that work. But at this point, we're suggesting that parental assistance inside our classrooms would not be permissible for the next 6 weeks. As your guidance from last board meeting, we have already been in contact with our youth recreation leagues, and they're so excited about coming back using our facilities for especially the basketball season that's just about to kick off. All of the leadership have been informed, and it is on our FMX portal, that it would be our expectation that COVID-19 protocols are followed when the external groups are using the board's facilities. Our school support organizations, which include our PTAs, the booster clubs, and our Twinsburg Schools Foundation, would be invited to use the facilities for meetings, fundraisers, and events, as long as COVID-19 protocols are followed. And then, of course, those things happen outside of the school day, but we would request that their plans for fundraisers or events would be authorized prior to publicizing for those events. So if there's any tweaks that need to be made, that we can do that on the front end. All visitors and chaperones will be required to wear masks and to practice our COVID-19 protocols. And that's just been common practice here since March of 2020. And then, of course, the board, as I promised, our next evaluation of the recommendations would occur at the next board meeting, second board meeting in November, which would be on November 17th. At that point, hopefully things have righted themselves a little bit. Hopefully vaccinations will be allowed for the younger students. Hopefully we'll be able to maybe present less restrictions to begin to add more normality to our school district. But based on the data that I have been looking at, based on conversations with Health Commissioner Donna Skoda, and based on our own data points, as well as the feedback gathered from our staff members, I'm making these recommendations to you this evening, and I'm very interested in learning your direction for these recommendations.
I have a question. So it's not mandated for the staff and teachers to get vaccinated, correct?
Correct.
Okay, which I'm glad that it's pro-choice. However, when you said about field trips and the volunteers have to be vaccinated, isn't that kind of like, if you're not requiring the teachers to be vaccinated, so why are you going to require the volunteers to be vaccinated?
That's a great question, Mrs. Fabio. And here's the reason why. Our teachers have been in this closed cohort with their students. And so we keep the kids in what we call these cohorts together. When you introduce somebody who's not in the cohort, that's where the problems may begin to happen with regard to the spread of the virus.
But I understand that. But a vaccinated person can spread it just as easily as a non-vaccinated person. That's where I don't think anybody understands. And that needs to be addressed too. So even if there are vaccinated, you can still spread it just as much as a non-vaccinated person. And especially if people have already had the COVID virus, they already have the antibodies, which they're immune to it. That's what people aren't understanding. So that's why I have an issue when you're saying that the volunteers have to be required to be vaccinated in order to go on a field trip, but the teachers don't. And I'm not saying that the teachers should be mandated. It should be pro-choice. It should be their choice. But I'm just saying you can't hold one responsible to get being vaccinated to help out and not the other when they both can spread it.
And I think maybe the risk factor, and she does have some points too, but I think maybe the risk factor is higher if you're not vaccinated. And
I have to differ with that, but go ahead. I'll stay quiet.
But my concerns are, and I don't know the right or wrong with this. And everybody has their choice as to whether they want to be vaccinated or not. It's a personal choice. What's best, what you feel is best for you or your family. But yeah, there are concerns as far as transmission and this Delta variant being more aggressive than what we saw in the past. I have other comments, but if anybody has comments related to that.
I'll just weigh in, overall, first of all, it's a lot to unbundle. Since Friday, March 13th, 2020, the night of a 6 p.m. Emergency board meeting, we've worked very, very hard. The administrator, the board, and the teachers, and I can certainly understand the anxiety of being in a certain environment. The decisions we made about masking, we made it before school started. Believe whatever statistics you want. Beacon Journal just did a whole study. Those districts that chose to make it optional have a much higher rate of COVID and quarantine than those districts that chose to go mask mandate. That's statistics and such. There are a lot of research out there. Some people think you are immune, Ms. DeFabio, if you've had it, and that can be true, but if the antibodies are waning from the vaccines, believe me, they're waning just like they do in the flu virus.
But there's science out there that proves that. If we're all about following the science, you
Right.
gotta follow
What
the
I'm saying
science.
is
There's
that-
science that proves that.
Right, that the immunity will wane over time, whether you had a vaccine and or if you had COVID. But
No,
we're not here to debate science about, whether you can get it. Yeah, I agree with you, you can transmit it. I will agree with you that I am not comfortable requiring a vaccination if we're not requiring it for staff. I do have an issue with that. I do think we're not there yet. That was the perfect quote that came out of the first quote. I think we need to keep all of our mandates in place and very thoughtfully consider, how we might be doing this. I think that every 6 weeks makes sense. We're just now seeing, as you mentioned, all the colleges requiring it and corporations starting to require vaccines. What we probably don't have is the full immunity from those that are just now getting vaccinations. We're not seeing the mass resignations that people thought would happen across the country. We are seeing from New York City schools and so forth, all the folks that are getting vaccinated. But that doesn't mean they're fully immune yet. So I'm having a hard time with the close classroom visitors, period. And I'm not sure I want, people in the buildings. But we've come this far. Let's wait another 6 weeks. Let's see if the Delta has peaked as they may be indicating it. Great. If more people are getting vaccinated and that is reducing the rates, I think that's also very positive. But I don't think we're there yet to start bringing people into the buildings, anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm fine with pretty much all of your recommendations. Mrs. Powers, the only one that I do have a problem with is the proof of vaccination, only because it's not consistent with everything else. I'd much rather, have people follow our protocols like we're requiring everybody else. I just think that at this juncture, requiring somebody to furnish proof of vaccination is a slippery slope. I would much rather, if we were under the circumstance of, something coming down from the state,
Federal
for that matter, but I just think at this juncture it's a slippery slope. I do realize that all of these recommendations you put a lot of thought into them and obviously gotten a lot of feedback, with respect to our staff. That's the only thing that I struggle with. That's the only one that I have a problem with. Everything else, I'm in full agreement with what you're recommending.
And then I saw something on one of the slides. And so there's concerns about volunteers inside the classroom. But one thing that I saw that I would not have issue with, and I'll tell you why, is volunteers helping maybe outside the classroom, outside of the building. And one of the experiences I'm recalling is with each of my children, when they were in looping, like the 5th and 6th grade classes with Spring and Henderson's class, they would take the children outdoors and do outdoor activities. And I volunteered for all of those activities, and it really, the application of learning outside, bringing it back into the classroom, I think it was just overall a huge and positive experience for the kids. But I'll just, for a few seconds, let you know how I volunteered. I really didn't interact with the kids so much. I was just an extra set of eyes, an extra supervisor, somebody to kind of keep the kids moving along. And because if you have one teacher out there and classroom kids, it's pretty much impossible to do that kind of work outside. I would be in favor maybe of having a parent volunteer for outdoor activities when you're not having close interaction with the kids, but you do need an extra assistance. I don't know if many teachers do anything like that. I know a few do, and that's my opinion on that part of it. And then, I don't know if this was, I know you mentioned no masks at recess, and I think there was a problem maybe first or second day of school, an issue that was brought up and resolved. But I think there's still a misconception out there because I've seen it on social media that the kids have to wear their masks at recess.
And Jim.
And so I want, like, if there's clarification on that because I think a lot of people are thinking that that is happening. And then, let's see. Now, obviously we had less COVID cases at this time last year, but then we were also hybrid, but it's still concerning those numbers that we're having positive cases for.
I would take that with a grain of salt though, because it wasn't widespread.
Right. So it's.
I mean, I think our numbers are up, but I also think, there wasn't the testing.
That's true. It wasn't as common. It was very hard.
Tests, they weren't accessible.
Right. But we are still seeing definitely increase in cases. And so that is concerning. And we don't know for sure or not if if this vaccine will be available by the date that they said, because in the spring we heard it was in the fall, or in the spring we heard it would be possibly available in fall, and then we hear winter. So that keeps going up and down as well as when it may be available. But bottom line, we need to just keep protecting our staff and our students at this point. And definitely everybody has their own opinion on this, and it doesn't mean one side is 100% right and the other side is 100% wrong. There's lots of valid reasonings on both sides, but I just want, in my opinion, want to do whatever we can to keep these kids in school and to keep them safe.
The other thing too is are the kids, when they go out to recess, especially at Wilcox and the younger grades, are they allowed to play with equipment or like balls, like four square, things like that?
Yes, and they do. The thing is that the equipment is shared within that classroom cohort, and then at the end of recess, it's sanitized for use for the next recess period.
Okay, because some parents are saying that their kids are playing, but they're not even allowed to play with the ball.
That's not the case.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of things are being said.
Right, they're using the equipment this year, and they're playing with equipment as well. Playground equipment, like the swings and whatever, and then they were also using the balls. And I use the example of Mr. Reese, who has made sure that the sixth graders over at RBC have the guy out pit that's using the ball and four squares. So we have that out and available for the children.
Thank you. I mean, you can even see in the back of RBC some of the things that are set up for gaming, not electronic gaming, but games for the kids at recess.
So there really are a couple that we might need to discuss again, because I would agree that it is a slippery slope to require vaccination when we're not required for staff. But, and I agree with it not to have parental visits in the classroom. I think really it comes down to, I agree with all the recommendations except for the field trips. I think that I don't want to require vaccination. I'd rather just not have them there yet. We're just not there yet.
You would just rather not?
I'd rather not have the chaperones and parentals on the school bus in the close contact. I'd rather keep them, as you termed, in their cohorts, that we can control the distancing, the sanitization. It's working. Masking is working, as based on, again, we were compared to other districts like us that we mandated versus other districts that didn't, and a lot of them reversed their policies very quickly. A lot of them, if they're optional, are having issues. And that was, I don't know, was it about 10 or 20 schools Summit schools that Beacon Journal reported on the other day.
So
that's really the only one that
Farley,
I would say is no chaperones, for another 6
back to
weeks.
number 1 and 2.
Yeah, if you want to bring them up one by one, but.
Okay, so first has to do with the meetings, and I honestly think that this is a strong recommendation. I have heard both sides, parents and staff, who like the virtual meetings, and I think they're very efficiently run this way. So for the next 6 weeks, we would suggest that the virtual meetings should continue. Now, I do have to say, if a parent has a specific situation, all they have to do is call the building principal. And the building principal will help manage an in-person meeting with the
there's a way to do it
classroom
safe.
teacher. There's always a way, and parents just need to feel welcome and open to do that. But the majority of our parent-teacher conference, IEP meetings, 504 meetings will continue to be held virtually. Is everyone okay with that recommendation?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. So the second one has to do with our field trips. And I have to tell you, board, after the last meeting when we talked about this, I did correspond with the teachers, and they were very excited about allowing students to go on trips. Our first field trip for the high school actually is down to Rover Stokes down in Twinsburg, and it's a STEM field trip, and that's being managed by Mr. Popovich as part of the work of the academy. But I do want to suggest, based on what Mr. Felber just said, is potentially the board may consider continuing the allowance of the field trips, but at this point not permit the parent chaperones so that we can continue to say that the kids and their teacher remains in this cohort that we've established for the school year.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I didn't say. I'm like, if we're gonna, like I said, I think we all agree that there should be field trips, but if we're gonna, and I understand your rationale. My question to you was going to be, what's the rationale for requiring it? And it makes sense to me, but it's a slippery slope. So rather than go down that slippery slope, the only other option would be, have them not go, because I don't want students not going on field trips.
I guess it would be interesting if they end up in a field trip with a company that requires 100% vaccination.
That'd be good.
Yeah, but
Are you okay, Mrs. Davis, with the recommendation of the adjustment to number 2? So field trips are permitted, but we're not going to take parent chaperones at this time.
I would, I want to continue on with the field trip. See, I want the kids to be able to have these experiences and maybe look for other adult helpers. I don't know what that would look like, or if that means another teacher. But then that requires having a sub at the building. But depending on the age or depending on the field trip, there may be need for other adults, supervision. So I think we're going to need to get creative that way. But I don't want to take away the field trips.
So you're okay if we could manage the trip within our own staff? Yes, trips would continue. We just wouldn't have parent chaperones for the next 6 weeks.
I wish we could. That sounds like the staff is maybe uncomfortable with that as well.
6 weeks are very short fights.
Yeah.
Take it one step at a time.
Not
Come
set in
this far,
stone.
we haven't seen all the impacts of all the, the vaccination. So let's just take it for another 6 weeks.
Mrs. DeGardio, do you have any comments about field trips?
No, I agree. Kids could go on the field trips, but I mean, I wouldn't, with the teachers, if you want to stay within that cohort. But how many field trips are there between now and 6 weeks from now?
Not very many.
Okay,
Because the weather's going to start to get bad.
Right.
Springtime is busy.
Okay.
And I just know the one high school one. That's the only bus field trip I've signed up on so far.
Okay, so that should be okay.
Number 3 was the permission for parents and volunteers to work in our offices. Again, that's away from the children, but it does bring adults who are not now in the cohort into the buildings.
I'm fine with that.
I'm actually not, because I think it introduces the same thing as a field trip. If you've got half your staff that's anxious about people, and all of a sudden they have to go into the office and pick up their mail, and there's another adult and they don't know. I think it's too early. Another 6 weeks. If there's tasks like sorting and stapling, things that can be a package left out and someone can pick it up, I'm okay with that. But I don't think now's the time. I think just another 6 weeks. Let's see where we're at November 17th. I don't think we're gonna not be able to operate another 6 weeks without the staff and volunteers. I think I would hold off.
With that explanation, Mr. Curtis?
No, I'm fine with it. It's the student piece that I'm, really more focused on with respect to this piece. I'm less concerned with that. My only other rationale for allowing it is that, we're allowing these other organizations to gather, in our buildings as long as they follow protocols that we have in place. I would expect the same in this situation. So as long as they, you can't come in here and, say you don't want to wear a mask and, this and that. No. I mean, if you want to be in here in this particular situation, you have to have a mask. You have to follow the protocols that we have in place.
Thank you. Mrs. Davis?
I'm okay with parent assistance with number 3. If it makes some staff members more comfortable, maybe having a schedule posted of when these parents are coming in and what times, so that they're aware of maybe what area these parents will be working in, and if at all possible, an empty space if it's something that doesn't require like copying or equipment, but maybe at least have some kind of schedule too, so there's a little bit of awareness there.
Okay, great idea. I'll pass that along. Mrs. Fabio?
I agree.
I would say since 3 or 4 of us agreed, I would like to at least make sure that there's some procedures for protocol and training if you're going to allow people in close quarters in office. And like Mrs. Davis said, limited as much as possible to isolated areas. If it's that critical that in the next 6 weeks that we have parent assistants in our clerical office, then I think we can't just come in and assume they know our protocol.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure that gets
And also limited access to, they can't be going down the cafeteria, they can't be going anywhere where there's students. They can't be coming in and out during dismissal.
Okay. Thank you. The next number 4, in-school booster PTA sponsored events board. You last meeting allowed this to occur. So this is just a reminder that this is something that we spoke about. And again, we have the book fairs happening. So this is an example of what number 4 might look like. We're good with number 4, I take it down?
I am.
Yes.
Number 5, this is where we're saying at this point, with the feedback from the staff, my recommendation is that classroom participation or classroom assistance by parents and guardians would not be permissible for the next 6 weeks. Feedback on that?
No, I agree. One of the things that, with respect to the feedback that jumped out of this is the feedback that we got from Dodge. That's a legitimate concern. And so, rather than have it for some buildings and not others, I think to be consistent, we shouldn't have it unless, there's some dramatic change or shift, in what we're seeing, cases. Again, as Mr. Felder has alluded to, we're revisiting this frequently enough where none of this is set in stone, where we're continuing to revisit, reassess, and tweak, as things change, as conditions change.
Thank you. Mrs. Gabby, we need feedback on number 5.
And number 5. Yeah, I didn't want to hold off for another 6 weeks to find out. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
And I agree. I don't want to undermine the staff's concerns, and just for my own personal a personal view. And that one does sadden me because I know a lot of teachers really did enjoy having parents in and getting the extra help. And I was one of those parents for many, many years. But at the same time, yeah, I do not want to put the staff in a position where they're not feeling safe.
And I appreciate that, Ms. Davis. And when you read the comments, you can see there's a thread that they so desire to have the parents back in the classroom. They're just very anxious about it right now. So they miss the help. Honestly, our parents have been so great to our classroom teachers. They do so many wonderful things and help support some of the learning too. But the staff is just very uncomfortable at this point.
And you know what? I don't know who said it, but somebody may suggest it. Maybe you, Rob. If the parents still want to reach out to teachers and ask, is there anything I can do at home for you to help? Is there anything that you need put together? Because there are parents out there who definitely would do that and would help out if they needed it kind of outside of that school day.
Sure they would. Okay, number 6 And this is a continuation of what we talked about before. I'm just putting it down here just to formalize it. And again, we've already reached out to the youth rec leagues, and they're so excited about coming back in. These are after hours on the weekends, and the organizations understand about the COVID-19 protocol. So I think that that's just a matter of putting a dot on the end of that sentence, just so that that becomes formally recognized.
Are we going to require compliance officers?
So for each of the organizations that are using the facilities, for example, TDL, when they are submitting their request to facilities in the portal, it is asking them to identify a compliance officer for each of their events. We will train them just so that they are aware of protocols and masking, those kinds of things, physical distance. So that's already been offered. And Mr. Fantone has done a great job of either providing the training himself or having one of the compliance officers do that.
Good, so that's an FMX. I might suggest that we audit a little bit, especially when it starts back up. So those that have been used to activities outside and they come in our buildings, that they're fully aware, that their guests are fully aware, and that we maybe spot check where we can, so that their compliance officers are doing what they're supposed to do by our protocol.
And to add to that, I think the motivation would be for the compliance officers to be very aware of what's going on, because that could, shut down their program if they're not.
I mean, at least let them know what their responsibilities are and what their rights are. I mean, if our procedures are mask up, they have to enforce it. If they don't enforce it, they run the risk of their event being canceled.
I really have the faith that our residents understand that we're all in this thing together. Those who are in leadership positions with the rec leagues have just been great in conversations with me. They are willing to do what they need to do to get the kids back on the courts. And so I appreciate the conversation here tonight, but I know that they don't want their season shut down because of the spread issue either. So we'll make sure that that's related. The next thing here that talks about our school support organizations, our PTAs, the boosters, the Twinsburg Schools Foundation, using the facilities. Again, this was discussed at the last board meeting, and this was just a formality included in tonight's presentation. I think I captured that as you directed the last meeting. And we've also communicated that to the organizations as well. Good. And then the next slide just again reiterates that all visitors, we'll take up the word chaperones because we're not going to have any right now. All visitors are required to wear masks in the practice of our COVID-19 protocols. That's during the school day as well as in the evenings too. And that the board would request that I would reevaluate our plan and present on November 17th. Now the thing, board, if you want us to do it sooner than the 17th, it's up to you. 6 weeks is what we decided earlier in the school year. If you want us to look at this sooner than 6 weeks, we can make that adjustment.
Why don't we just play it by ear?
So leave it at 6 weeks unless something were to.
Yeah.
And I don't want to confuse the public either. I mean, this is what we said that, we were going to do. I'd just rather just stick to it, just, evaluate in those time frames.
Okay, I really appreciate your feedback. None of this is easy, and I know as the Board of Education, this weighs heavily on your hearts and minds, but with this kind of direction, we can continue moving the district forward, and we appreciate any opportunities that we can that really enrich the environment and allow opportunities for kids to accelerate their learning. So thank you very much for the long conversation tonight and for your direction. And that concludes our administrative reports for this evening.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mrs. Fox. All right, so moving on to the business part of our meeting. For item H, Treasurer Report Recommendations. 1, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the following meeting minutes, regular meeting of September 1st and September 22nd, 2021, as sent to the board under separate cover. 2, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the following financial reports for the month of August 2020. Bank reconciliation, general fund financial summary report, and financial report by fund as sent to the board under separate cover. And 3, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the check register for the month of August 2020. The total including payroll is $6,919,797.32. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Fabio. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Curtis. Any discussion on this? No? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mr. Culver,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes. Those items pass 4-0. I have to pull this down so this doesn't seem up. Action item I. Resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the certificated licensed personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the classified personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. And 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the supplemental contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
second.
Second by Mr. Curtis. Is there any discussion on these 3 items? No? All right, hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Culver,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes. Those items pass 4-0. Action item J, new business. 1, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves Twinsburg High School senior Gavin McCoy to exercise BOE policy number 5111, optional tuition-free education, and remain a Twinsburg High School student through the end of the 21-22 school year. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the memorandum of understanding with the Twinsburg Support Staff Association regarding leave options throughout the 2021-2022 school year as a result of the continued impact of the COVID-19 outbreak as sent to the board under separate cover. 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a memorandum of understanding with the Twinsburg Support Staff Association, TSSA, regarding the need to hire additional lunchroom, playground assistants for the 2021-2022 school year to continue COVID-19 health and safety protocols and allowing the board to extend employment to staff members who are otherwise employed as part-time employees and other job classifications as outlined in the agreement, as sent to the board under separate cover. 4, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the following administrators as credentialed evaluators for the purpose of the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, OTES 2.0, and the Ohio Principal Evaluation System, OPES, for the 2021-2022 school year, and those names are listed below. 5, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the purchase of computers from GovConnection Incorporated, 732 Milford Road, Merrimack, New Hampshire, 03054, in the amount of $214,830 as sent to the board under separate cover. This is a general fund expenditure. 6, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a COVID-19 stipend for the members of the Twinsburg City School District staff and employees assigned to the Twinsburg City School District through the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio, who were employed by the board during the 2020-2021 school year and returned to work for the 2021-2022 school year. This one-time COVID-19 bonus stipend shall be equivalent to 0.5% of the employee's salary as identified in the employee's 2020-2021 salary notice. This stipend will be paid by October 31st, 2021. This is an ESSER fund expenditure. 7, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a memorandum of understanding with the Twinsburg Education Association regarding the appointment of a teacher and the need to fulfill a licensure requirement within 60 days of employment as sent to the board under separate cover. Salary schedules. 8, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the revised administrative personnel salary schedule effective 8/1/2021 through 7/31/2022. The central office salary schedule effective 7/1/2021 through June 30th, 2022. and the psychologist and athletic trainer salary schedule effective August 1st, 2021 and 7/31/2022 per the attached exhibit. 9, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a settlement agreement, release and waiver for educational expenses for one student receiving special education services at the Lawrence School for the 2021-2022 and 2022-2023 school years in the amount not to exceed $28,285 for the 2021-22 school year, and in the amount not to exceed the standard tuition for the 2022-2023 school year, and for the conditions outlined in the agreement as sent to the board under separate cover. This is a general fund expenditure. 10, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a continuance of the district reopening plan as presented, discussed, and confirmed in item G. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Felber. Is there any discussion related to these items?
Is the psychologist and athletic trainer's salary schedule that's with the Cleveland Clinic?
That's a great question, Mrs. DeFabio. Actually, the salary schedule that we're talking about is the one that has the school psychologist, and it includes the athletic trainer when the board used to hire them individually, like Mr. Shear was. We haven't changed that. That just keeps the salaries aligned to what was in the past. Now, when we look to approve them for next school year, we can take off the athletic trainer salary schedule in full because we're not hiring somebody individually by the Board of Education. Athletic trainers are now through the Cleveland Clinic's contract with the board.
I would also point out, thank goodness we went 1-to-1 years before the pandemic. But now we're at the point in the process where we are starting to replace Chromebooks, so that's why you see that. And I appreciate the MOUs with the various unions as that is detailed there. Early in the pandemic, CBCC did a stipend for employees, obviously a much smaller employee pool, but they've just dealt with so much and worked so very hard. I think it's a small recognition to everything they've had to deal with, everything, even what we saw in the anxiety and the quotes that were read earlier. So very much in favor of that stipend in item 6.
All right, any other comments?
Just one quick question. So the athletic trainer salary, it's just for the psychologist, school psychologist, correct?
Right, they both happen to sit on the same schedule, but we're only using the school psychologist part of that schedule.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Great
that's not a
question.
spend, that's a schedule.
It's just a schedule, right?
Just a listing of what the salary would be, but we're not employing that
Right.
position.
It's similar to the teacher's contract where we list a whole bunch of supplemental contracts, but we don't fill them every year. The same thinking here.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Felber, your comment about the Chromebooks made me jump up because I wrote to the board Thursday night of last week about that expenditure. I'd like to read into record what I wrote to you because I think this is really important. And actually, thanks to the diligent efforts of Mr. Welker, our business manager, as well as Mr. McGeing, our supervisor of technology, we've saved a lot of money in how this purchase is being recommended tonight. I want to read to the public what I wrote to the board. The district's Chromebook initiative commenced in the second semester of the 17-18 school year. It was determined that the Chromebook should be placed on a 4-year replacement cycle. Considering the supply chain challenges that we have encountered in the past related to Chromebooks, remember last year they were stuck on a pier in China, we recommend that we purchase Chromebooks in the fall to provide strong assurance that they are ready to be distributed for the next school year. We also believe that this strategy will provide us with the greatest flexibility in securing supply and attractive pricing, as the fall season is not as much of a peak demand period for Chromebooks. This year, we believe the strategy worked. The lowest quote was from Connection, and it beat the NeoNet consortium price by over 22%, or over $55 per Chromebook. This year, we are slated to purchase 1,100 Chromebooks, meaning that this quote is beating the Neonet Consortium price by over $60,000. In addition, this price is only 1.5% higher than the price we secured last year. This pricing is expected to only be available for the month of October due to some pretty attractive rebates that are included in the quote. So by the fact that our staff is on top of these things, that the staff is looking to get the best bargain for the purchase, I think the board is going to reap some pretty significant benefits of the pricing that we're presenting tonight for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for reading that in its entirety. Both those gentlemen have done a tremendous job.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I'm actually pretty amazed because the district that I work in, we purchase through the same consortium that you do, and I don't know where you found a lower price than that, because that's a really rock bottom price. So I'm truly impressed, and I'm very curious.
And thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walker, because this is just an example of one area where we've seen, I don't know if I want to use the word savings, but I will for lack of a better term. What's that?
I was already standing.
I know, I was trying to think of something else because
Reducing
I
your
know that
expenditures.
make your ears ring. You do this all the time with us, and it's definitely appreciated. All right. So with that, Mr. Ayo, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Feldman?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. Those items pass 4-0. Moving on to item number 11, voucher joinder resolution. Whereas the deduction of funds from the school district by the Ohio Department of Education and payment of those funds to private schools, educational choice voucher funds, diminishes the amount of funding and the levels of educational opportunity for the education of the students of the pupils in the district, and whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district further reduces the funding available to support the additional needs of district minority pupils, pupils in poverty, and pupils with disabilities. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district can result in an involuntary transfer of district local tax revenue approved by the voters of the district for the support of the district's operating expenses to private religious schools for the support of those schools' programs in violation of the rights of the district taxpayers. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district increases reliance on local tax revenue to maintain school operations in violation of the Ohio Constitution and clear directives of the Ohio Supreme Court. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Twinsburg City School District that Section 1, the Board of Education finds and determines that the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district is harmful to the district, its pupils, taxpayers, voters, and staff. Section 2, the Board of Education authorizes and directs the school district's joinder of the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding Coalition, and directs the district treasurer to pay coalition dues as set forth in Section 3. Section 3, coalition dues for the 2021-2022 school year are the sum of $2 per district pupil. Enrollment listed on the most recent report card, except that for the ESC boards of education, the dues shall be the sum of 20 cents per pupil, ADM as of the latest report card, or 3,000, whichever is less. Dues shall be allocated by the coalition as follows. 1, 50 cents per pupil shall be initially allocated to the payment of coalition operating expenses, and 2, $1.50 per pupil shall be allocated to the support of the coalition's efforts in opposition to the deduction of school voucher funds from this and other districts. Coalition dues are payable upon passage of this resolution. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. DeFabio. Discussion.
Yeah, I just want to say this is extremely important of our involvement with other districts in this coalition. One, It allows us to kind of defray the legal costs associated, with kind of fighting this legislation. Vouchers have been around a long time, and this is something that's been argued a lot. And it's well known that public dollars were meant for public schools. So when you pay your property taxes, when you pass levies, these dollars are meant to stay and support the districts in which you reside. And when what happens when every biennium, when we screw around with the formula like we did this time, even though we realized more money as a result of the Fair Funding Act, the bottom line is that the pot of monies that this comes from, the voucher money also comes from this same pot. So it actually reduces the amount of money that we realize, or that districts in the state of Ohio could realize, based on wanting to provide more money in the form of vouchers to private schools. So they can call them vouchers, but the bottom line is it's our tax dollars. It's tax dollars that were levied for purposes of being spent in public school districts. And so this is going to allow us to kind of put forth a good fight to get this to change. And it not only helps our school district, but it helps all school districts throughout the state who are negatively impacted by vouchers.
Very well said. Just putting in the fact that the money was levied, you're paying your property taxes, expecting that money to go to the schools. Very succinct, and really drives it home.
Right, and just another example of just complexities of school funding, and why we're so appreciative of support from the community. We wish we didn't have to put levies out there. We wish there was this magic wand we can wave, but I just, once again, thank you for the support, how supportive our community has always been. That's all I have to add about that. Okay. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes. So miscellaneous, I've been told by a little birdie that somebody in our audience, it's their 40th birthday, Mr. Welker, and
I was going to say
he's
something.
enjoying it in the seats over there, and hopefully he'll be able to get home soon to his family.
Cheap seats.
Yeah, the cheap seats waiting back. So happy birthday. Anything else for miscellaneous?
I was holding back on that one. I didn't embarrass him. I was going to say something during the last resolution, so. Happy birthday, Chad.
Thank you.
Your president is that we won't sing.
Now go home.
I actually do have something for miscellaneous. So if you recall, back a few months ago, I participated in a legislative conference, national conference of the National School Boards Association in conjunction with the Ohio School Boards Association, where we met with our elected officials and were able to kind of talk to them about a few things. And I mentioned to you that we were not able to get meetings scheduled with a few legislators, one of which was Senator Rob Portman, another was Senator Sherrod Brown. We had since reached out to them after the conference to see if we could engage them because for whatever reason they couldn't avail themselves or an aide during that time. Senator Portman still has not gotten back to us, but Senator Sherrod Brown actually did. So we were actually able to meet with him on the 24th of September, and he spent a good amount of time on the phone with us. I mean, I'm sorry, not on the phone, but on a Zoom call with us for probably about a half hour. And so just to put that into perspective, typically when you're on the Hill or when you're in Columbus meeting with representatives or senators, the amount of time you have is usually about 15 minutes. You literally have to kind of run down the items that you want to talk about, the priorities that you want to discuss, and hopefully get their support to take back. So he spent half an hour with this group. One of the things that he discussed with us is the current infrastructure bill that you're hearing a lot about. He seemed very optimistic that there were going to be some provisions in that bill that would help school districts. Now, I did also say that was the case when I met with other representatives, a few months ago, but he seems very optimistic. It's still going on. He thought that it might have been passed by now, but it's still going on. He also expressed a lot of support for what school boards are having to endure right now as a result of the pandemic, mask mandates, vaccinations, and such. And he really just thanked us for our commitment to sticking to making sure that we're providing as safe an environment as possible for our students and staff, and doing everything that we can to mitigate the effects of COVID-19. So I wanted to make sure I brought that update to you. We were pleasantly surprised that he himself met with us and not an aide. And I just wanted to make sure that I gave you that update as legislative liaison.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so,
I'm just reminded, all boards dinner, October 28th, last week. So if you haven't, is it through Marianne? Make your reservations. That'll be the first all boards dinner in 2 years.
right?
At CDCC. And then Mark will make fun of me because then I have to go to the board meeting immediately afterward. You guys all get to go home.
Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you for that. So there's no need for executive session tonight. So meeting is adjourned.
So move.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis, second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Felber. This concludes our board meeting. Thank you so much, and thank you to those who were watching online once again.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Curtis.
Yes.
Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes. That passes 4-0.